Hey everyone, welcome back to Rocky Watches Movies. Today we're taking a wild, surreal ride through the groundbreaking comedy series Monty Python's Flying Circus. Bursting with absurd sketches, unforgettable characters, and a humour that has influenced generations, this show changed the landscape of television comedy forever. But how much do you really know about what went on behind the scenes? So get ready to laugh, scratch your head, and dive into 20 things you never knew about Monty Python's Flying Circus. Several British television programmes greatly influenced the work of the Monty Python crew. One notable example was the rather subversive show Q, which was among Cleese's favourites. Michael Palin reported that he and Terry Jones had also adored the Q shows, describing them as full of surrealism and inventive risks. He added that when it came to Python, he and Jones had been so impressed that they had checked the end credits for the director's name and hired him, which is how they met Ian McNaughton. Arguably the most influential, however, was The Goon Show, written and starring Spike Milligan. Originally broadcast on the radio, the show explored themes familiar to contemporary British audiences, including politics, art, class relations, and the sexual repression typical of the Conservative era. A few years before the comedy troupe made their debut, two of its future stars, John Cleese and Graham Chapman, appeared in another sketch comedy TV series, where many ideas that would later become Monty Python sketches were first developed. Although it aired in 1967, the show was titled, at last, The 1948 Show. It was not the only occasion on which future Monty Python members collaborated before the group's formation. In 1968, the TV broadcast How to Irritate People was produced and is now regarded as a clear precursor to the series that would capture audiences just a year later. On this occasion, Michael Palin starred alongside Cleese, Chapman, and the rest of the team from At Last, The 1948 Show. The title Monty Python's Flying Circus went through many bizarre possibilities before it was finalised. The BBC initially proposed Baron von Tuck's Flying Circus, in honour of Barry Tuck, the comedy advisor who helped bring the group to the network, and even warmed up the audience on the first night of filming. Other names considered included Owl Stretching Time, Bun Wacket Buzzard Stubble and Boot, A Horse, a Spoon and a Bucket, The Toad Elevating Moment, and Vaseline Review. The BBC liked the phrase Flying Circus and told the team to attach something distinctive to it, eventually settling on Monty Python. Though the group only submitted that as a casual suggestion, the BBC printed it in their schedule before they could object. The true origin of Monty Python remains uncertain. Some claim it referred to a bar regular, while others believe it simply evoked the image of a dodgy showbiz agent. Whatever the case, the absurd name proved a perfect fit for the troupe's offbeat humour. There was little division of labour among the Pythons. Everyone contributed in multiple ways, and no one insisted on favouring one role over another, making the creation of the show a truly democratic endeavour. That said, Graham Chapman and John Cleese typically wrote together, having developed a close friendship during their college years. The others formed their own smaller creative groups, each of which tended to develop a distinctive style. The giant foot featured in the show's opening credits represents Cupid and is taken from Bronzino's painting, An Allegory with Venus and Cupid. The National Gallery dates the painting to around 1545 and notes that it was presented to King Francis I of France as a gift. Terry Gilliam reportedly saw the painting at the National Gallery in 1969 while seeking inspiration for Flying Circus. According to unearthed internal memos, BBC One controller Paul Fox believed the troupe had gone over the edge of what was acceptable. Stephen Heast, head of art features, claimed they wallowed in the sadism of their humour, while entertainment chief Bill Cotton felt Monty Python seemed to have some sort of death wish. It was even almost cancelled after just one episode. Despite those opinions and low audience ratings, the show persisted for 3.5 seasons, producing a total of 45 episodes and ran until 1974. Few Monty Python routines are as cherished as the classic dead parrot sketch, in which a pet shop clerk insists to an irate customer that the bird he purchased is not dead, but merely resting. A version first appeared in their sketch show How to Irritate People, and originally involved Chapman complaining that the car he had just bought from Palin was literally falling apart, while Palin constantly denied the increasingly obvious evidence. This was all inspired by a real-life encounter in which Michael Palin met a stubborn car salesman who refused to acknowledge any issues with his car. On BBC TV and radio broadcasts, anchors would originally use the phrase "and now for something completely different" when presenting two unrelated news stories back-to-back. Monty Python, however, popularised the phrase and gave it a new association. Cleese, who had to be persuaded to continue co-writing and co-starring after the first batch of episodes, initially wanted to move on before the others. He explained that he had wanted to be part of the group but did not want to feel tied to them, as it felt like being married. He admitted that he began to lose control over his life and was not assertive enough in saying no. Cleese eventually left the series before its fourth and final season. Monty Python's choice of John Philip Sousa's iconic march, The Liberty Bell, as the theme for Monty Python's Flying Circus was driven as much by practicality as by whimsy. Performed in the show by the Band of the Grenadier Guards, the jaunty, rousing tune lent a mock-serious grandeur that perfectly contrasted the troupe's absurd and surreal humour. Interestingly, the decision was largely financial. Because the composition was in the public domain, the Pythons could use it freely without worrying about costly royalties. Terry Jones said that in 1971, he got a call that the BBC was going to erase all of the Monty Python original tapes so they could reuse them. This was a common penny-pinching technique in those days. Terry Gilliam then came to the rescue, buying the run of Python episodes before they could be erased, allowing us to enjoy them to this day. The American Broadcasting Company acquired the US rights to the 6 episodes of Season 4, intending to broadcast them as 2 90-minute late-night specials. When the troupe saw how ABC had assembled the first special, they sought an injunction to prevent the second from airing. ABC had cut 8 minutes from the 3 episodes, removing all uses of the words damn, hell and naughty bits, along with entire characters and, most crucially, punchlines. The Pythons sued the network, with Gilliam and Palin appearing in court in New York. The judge viewed both versions and reportedly laughed more at the original British cuts, but ruled in ABC's favour regardless. By the time the US Court of Appeals heard the case in December 1975, the second special had already aired. In the resulting settlement, the rights to the episodes reverted to the Pythons, who subsequently sold them to PBS. The show has gone on to make its mark in the computing world. When Guido van Rossum first developed his programming language Python, he was reading published scripts of the Flying Circus. It is also believed that unsolicited emails came to be known as spam thanks to the multi-user Dungeon online community in the 1980s. The term was used to describe pointless data flooding and also served as a reference to the classic Monty Python sketch. The premise revolves around a couple attempting to order breakfast, only to find that every dish contains spam, which the wife detests. Some of the meals include combinations such as spam, eggs and bacon, or spam, 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 sausage and more spam. Members of the group have stated that they were able to express themselves freely for much of the show's run. This made it possible for them to produce the controversial and groundbreaking material for which they became known. However, as the series progressed, the BBC increasingly imposed censorship, resulting in awkward edits and spirited clashes between the performers and production staff. According to an internal BBC memo, each member of Monty Python was paid a modest £160 per episode for their groundbreaking work. Considering the enduring cultural impact and global fame the series would achieve, this humble amount highlights just how modestly the BBC valued the show at the time, and how little the Pythons could have imagined the phenomenon their irreverent sketches would become. If there were anyone who could be considered the seventh Monty Python member, it would be Connie Booth. In addition to appearing regularly in sketches on Flying Circus, she featured in The Holy Grail, the How to Irritate People TV special, and Fawlty Towers with John Cleese. She was also married to Cleese in real life. During the production of the episode Scott of the Antarctic, the troupe stayed at the Gleneagles Hotel in Torquay, which was run by the notoriously eccentric Donald Sinclair. Sinclair's bizarre and often exasperating behaviour, ranging from odd demands to unpredictable interactions with guests, left a lasting impression on John Cleese. This experience directly inspired Cleese years later to co-create the classic British sitcom Fawlty Towers, with its unforgettable portrayal of the neurotic, short-tempered hotel owner Basil Fawlty. Terry Gilliam is the only member of the troupe to have been born and raised outside the United Kingdom. He was born in Minnesota and attended Occidental College in Los Angeles before moving to Britain. He became a British citizen in 1968 and later renounced his American citizenship in 2006. While the majority of the team came from England, Terry Jones hailed from further west. He was born in Colwyn Bay, a town on the northern coast of Wales, though not nearly as far west as Gilliam. The influence of Monty Python has been so profound that a term describing their style of humour has entered the English dictionary. Pythonesque is defined as denoting or resembling the absurdist or surrealist humour or style of Monty Python's Flying Circus, a British television comedy series. That's a pretty significant achievement, having a word named after one's work. The absurd walk performed by John Cleese in the Ministry of Silly Walks sketch was adapted into an endless runner game for mobile devices, featuring an animated Cleese executing his iconic gait. The developers even enlisted Cleese to provide some voice work for the game. And there you have it, folks. You now know a little bit more about Monty Python's Flying Circus. If you enjoyed the video, which I presume you did as you got this far, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos coming to Rocky Watches Movies. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.